Most people start the new year by making big plans, aiming to commit to a perfect routine or a perfect schedule, and they hope that this is finally the year that everything clicks. But that approach is usually the problem. I'm Salim, I'm a full-time doctor living in London, but I also work as a YouTuber and coach. And on top of this, I've always had a lot of personal goals and hobbies that I've been trying to balance. But the truth is, I've never had a perfect system or the perfect plan. I've only had a system that helps me just get on with doing. And that way of thinking, of just doing and not perfection, is one of the main reasons I've ended up where I am today. So in this video, I'll go through how I use Notion to help me do this, and how I'll use Notion to actively build on my system and goals in 2026 so that you can do the same. And I'll break the process down into three main stages: creating a second brain, turning awareness into action, and designing this year ahead. So the first thing I want to say is that when it's the new year, it's really easy to overwhelm yourself. You start thinking about everything you want to improve on: your work, your health, your relationships, and your routines all at once. And I've definitely had this myself, because alongside working full-time as a doctor, I'm running this channel and editing videos, coaching, training, and still trying to have a life. And at some point I realized that trying to improve all of that while keeping it all in my head just isn't practical, because your brain isn't designed to store, organize, and review your entire life. It's designed to think, make decisions, and take action. And that's why I outsource anything that doesn't need my brain into what people call a second brain. And for me, that second brain is Notion. It's what I use to offload my thinking so that I'm not constantly carrying it around mentally, whether that's my quarterly reviews, my ideas, or my goals. And this is where Notion Agent helps me do even more, because it can help me review all of this information I put down much more efficiently. Because instead of me manually reviewing pages of data trying to piece things together, Notion Agent can look across my workspace and do that for me, summarizing what matters, highlighting where my attention might be stretching too thin, and turning that into clarity so that I can optimize how I use my time and focus for more on what matters to me. And this has been especially useful as I'm trying to build more on this YouTube channel to figure out what's going to be most useful for all of you. So for example, I've been gathering feedback from you to see what you need help with, and with Notion Agent, I didn't have to spend hours to filter through information, because in just a few seconds, Notion Agent was able to go through all the information, pick out the most common issues, and create a page for me with the key things I had to know. And you can clearly see just how organized this was made for me. So you can imagine now how Notion Agent can make your thoughts and intentions into something that's much more easier to process. And recently, I also reviewed the last quarter of 2025 and reflected on how I spent my time and how things could have gone better. And because this was a big review of everything I spent my time on over the past 3 months, it's not too useful for me to keep going through that to see how much I am improving from then. So Notion Agent collated and summarized this information into a more concise form so that I could refer back to the key points whenever I had to. And on top of that, I was able to clarify things for me by asking specific questions for things I've been working on, so that I can figure out if there was anything I was missing. I'd suggest you to do this for yourself. Review what you've done over the past few months to see where you actually spent your time and energy. This is just the first step, because the next step takes this a lot further so that you and I can change this awareness into useful feedback. Because awareness on its own isn't enough. It's not too useful to track habits, log workouts, or write reflections if you never actually review that information. So once everything is out of my head and exists in an external place, the next question becomes, what do I actually do with all of this information? Because awareness on its own doesn't change anything in the long term. And if you want 2026 to actually be your best year, you need to start thinking longer term. So you need to review the information you gather instead of just collecting data and hoping for the best. And the problem is, this is where most people either overcomplicate things or give up entirely because it becomes too much. So what I do instead is keep this deliberately simple. Inside Notion, I have my basic habit scorecard and simple gym or health check-ins. It's not perfect. It doesn't have all the details, but it's consistent enough that it can provide me with useful data. And this is where Notion Agent acts to review everything to point out patterns I might have missed. Instead of me scrolling through old entries or trying to remember how my week went, I can ask the Notion Agent to review everything for me. It'll summarize how I've been doing, point out where my consistency drops, and highlight patterns, both good and bad, that I wouldn't notice myself day to day. This is the first shift, turning the raw awareness into feedback. But feedback only matters if it changes what you do next. And that's again where, in addition to thinking for myself about how I can improve my situation and improve improve on my input to get closer to my goals. I use the Notion agent to help me make more decisions too, because it works well to fill in any gaps in my thinking as part of this constructive feedback and action planning. And this might be through asking questions like, what's the one habit that's holding everything else back? Or what should I adjust next week based on the information over the past few weeks? This gives me specific and actionable advice tailored to me because it's able to utilize all the information I give it. And that same process applies to my work and my content as well. All my YouTube scripts and ideas live in Notion, and instead of emotionally guessing what to work on next based on what I feel like, I can ask the agent to review past scripts, identify themes, and suggest what deserves more focus. So now I'm not just tracking my life, I'm closing the loop between reflection and action, which is where you start to see the real value. Having a system that constantly reflects my behavior back to me helps me make better decisions over time, and it'll help you do the same without being overwhelmed. So now that you've got clarity and you're using feedback to guide your actions, the next step is to zoom out of the details and design the year ahead on a broader scale. But again, this isn't about planning every month perfectly. What you actually need is a system that grows with the year, reflects what matters, and helps you spot problems early. This is something I've seen a few friends do really well with their planning, and it's honestly something I haven't been consistent with myself, but I can already see with friends how much time and effort is saved by dealing with issues before they turn into bigger problems. So what I'm doing now is setting up a simple 2026 workspace in Notion with a page for each key area of my life: work as a doctor, YouTube, health, and personal projects. And instead of writing rigid goals for each area, I write questions. Things like, what's the one thing I should focus on this quarter? What am I neglecting without realizing? Or what needs simplifying instead of addition? This is where I can see Notion Agent really helping, because I can ask it to scan my reflections and reviews, highlight recurring patterns, and show me where my time and energy might be leaking. And because it can create the page for me with a simple prompt, I won't have to spend more time making it myself and can focus more on actually doing rather than prepping. This is one of the many things that makes Notion Agent much different compared with other applications or tools, because instead of just giving suggestions, it's able to actually do the work for you. And that makes it useful for a lot of things, but especially for 2026, it's going to be very useful for pointing out patterns in your habits and behaviors. This is necessary to be aware of when you're trying to do more things this year, because I know in the past, I found myself compromising on things that were important to me because I was trying to do too much. For example, I dropped my consistency with gym whenever I was editing videos back to back. And I know that having things like that directly pointed out would help me with potential improvements so that I can have a better balance. What's important from this is that it gives concrete adjustments to make. It gives actionable direction rather than vague motivation. And because the system isn't rigid or perfect, it stays flexible. It adapts as life changes, helping you improve gradually over time, and builds you real consistency that you can rely on, where you won't take on too much and risk burnout. So to create a sustainable system that helps you make 2026 your best year yet, try Notion Agent for free by following the link in the description and pinned comment. Thank you to Notion for sponsoring this video. But now a problem you might have is that even if you know how to create a second brain and system that works with you, you can still put things off. I've been there myself, where I procrastinated on what I should have been doing even though I had a plan and had the discipline. But over the past few years, I began to understand the exact causes of my procrastination. I figured out that it was more than just the typical distractions you might be thinking about, because it was a much deeper issue that caused procrastination, and it's something that's very likely the cause of yours too. And in this video here, I talk about exactly how I dealt with and stopped this procrastination to get to where I am, and it will help you do the same. So click the video to learn more.